Take a look at this. This is good old snowy Boston, Massachusetts. Could that be coming to a city near you? This is a special live edition of the Carolina Weather Group on a Sunday night. Buckle up, here we go. Welcome to the Carolina Weather Group. You're looking live over Charleston, South Carolina on this Sunday, January the 19th, 2025. And we have a special panel for you tonight as we prepare for round two of winter weather. We've got Jared Smith in Charleston. We've got Scotty Powell in Myrtle Beach. And joining us, Sam Walker. Happy New Year to you out there in the Outer Banks, because this is such an interesting snow setup, guys, because what we anticipate could happen over the course of the next few days is we could see a coastal setup. We're going to go through lots of computer models, so don't take this first one to Bible, but just to give you an idea of what this unique setup is, you can take a look at all of that winter weather that is out there closer to the coast. Just how close to the coast will it get? Just how far inland will it get? We have lots of questions to be answered, but Jared, let me start with you. You guys have a winter storm watch in coastal South Carolina, the first time since when?
2022. So we did have one for an ice storm a couple years ago. But that being said, this is the first winter storm watch for snow since 2018, when we had that winter wonderland to start that year. So rare air for sure, not something that we usually deal with. We also have a cold weather advisory here, and we're going to have that going on for the next couple days. We may get into extreme cold territory here. Here in Charleston, that means wind chills or temperatures 10 degrees or less. So, you know, we're kind of bracing ourselves for both. I could definitely starting to feel it get a little bit chillier out there, and the reinforcing Arctic front is backdooring in pretty much as we speak. So, getting ready for a chilly couple days here, and some rare air, some weather that we don't normally get.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm going to disappoint some folks, and it's not for the sake of teasing this out any, but we're going to get to the snow maps and the snow prediction in just a second. But Jared said something that I think is really critical, which is that the air is about to get really, really cold. And for most of you watching tonight, you'll thank us later when I say, don't worry about the snow, worry about the cold. Let's look at some of these cold temperatures that are coming into the Carolinas over the course of the next few days, because I want to make sure we don't catch anybody off guard. Nighttime low temperature starting with North Carolina, then making our way over to South Carolina as we make our way to tomorrow morning. 23 degrees would be the temperature here in Charlotte as I head out the door to work. Probably the same with you, unless you are off for the holiday, which I hope that many of you are. We are looking at 4 degrees in Boone, but if you think that's bad, let's take you ahead to Tuesday morning. And the bottom continues to fall out as we make our way to Wednesday morning. 1 degree in Boone, 10 degrees in Asheville. You guys will be below freezing out there, Sam. And so much of the area won't be above freezing until later on in the week. Sam, when you look at temperatures like that, what goes through your mind?
Well, we start thinking about all these vacation houses out here that haven't been occupied since, say, Thanksgiving, maybe some little ones in Christmas, but really November. And all the property managers have going to be scrambling a little bit. They have been, because we've been, down right around freezing and just below for a couple of days off and on since mid-December. The big worry about that is what it could end up doing to the plumbing in these houses. Sure. Because they're all elevated. So you've got that airflow that goes right underneath them. Somebody goes in and turns the heat off, and that's usually what happens. They turn it off, or at least turn it down to a pretty low level. That doesn't help. A lot of these houses aren't very well insulated, so you start thinking about busted pipes. Once we start seeing things freeze and then thaw out and folks turn the water back on when they get ready to start welcoming vacationers back soon.
Yeah, I'm already thinking about my route to work later on this week and which elevated bridges I want to avoid. Because as Sam just mentioned, take a look at even the high temperatures as we go through the course of the next few days here in North Carolina. If you're listening with us on our audio podcast, let me just tell you, these high temperatures are at freezing at the best across most of the area until we get to later Thursday or Friday. I told you guys we'd also take a look at South Carolina, and here are those numbers right now so that you can see what South Carolina's minimum temperature. These are the low temperatures. And this starts by the time you're done watching tonight's show. We're looking at 20 degrees across much of the region as we look ahead to Monday morning. And then Tuesday morning, we're in the teens with the exception of maybe Jared, Charleston, 27. You're going to meet a balmy 27 degrees on Tuesday morning. Congratulations.
I better find my flip-flops.
And here's Wednesday for you. Again, teens in the I-85 corridor, 20 in Columbia, and maybe 25 there in Charleston. The high temperatures after today are what we would hopefully maybe see as low temperatures, but these are the high temperatures. They're going to be probably just a few notches above freezing. So you guys might get a little reprieve in order to defrost. Let's get on over to the National Weather Service snow maps. And then I know you guys will have some of your own take on what your forecast will be. We know that certainly you guys are watching what the impacts are going to be in your neck of the region. But, we have this great new tool out this year from the folks over at NOAA, and they actually show us what the impacts are going to be. It doesn't matter whether it's going to be snow or ice or sleet. You can see so much of this will be felt again the closer you are to the coast. How unusual is that? It's normally the mountains or north of Interstate 85 we're talking about. Here is the forecast predictions from our friends at the National Weather Service. First, looking across North Carolina, you could see that we might only be talking a dusting to an inch of snow south of Interstate 85. Again, north of 85, unless you're like up in the mountains, you got your own thing going on, there's almost no snow for you. So here in Charlotte, I might be at the very cutoff of this. Maybe 1 inches in some places all along the coastal regions of North Carolina and down into coastal South Carolina. Jared, that's a close to 2-inch mark. Is that a close to 4-inch mark in Monk's Corner? Let's zoom into Charleston, Jared, and then I'm just going to hand this mic over to you. You tell us what you think might be going on as I try to get the Charleston zoomed in map here to load. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, the forecast has been interesting. It's been, we've seen a lot of back and forth a little bit, and we seem to be trending back towards a more suppressed solution, which is going to. That's why those of you in the upstate, in the Piedmont, into Western North Carolina, probably not seeing. You're not used to us talking about snow on the coast, and you guys get nothing.
So backwards.
Yeah, it's very strange. But what looks like is going to happen, again, a lot of this is going to depend on the proximity of the low coming up the coast as it moves offshore. There's still a lot that can work out here, but it looks like there's going to be some enhancement there. Looks like there's going to be some enhancement in the snow totals there, and then when you get along the coast and you get further south, that's when that warm nose is going to get into play. We may see a little bit more in the way of freezing rate. Now, it's worth noting that forecast is actually down from the initial predictions about a day or so ago. That was a little more into the 3 to 4 inch range. So that has come down some, trending a little bit drier here and maybe with a little bit more mix. So again, we're getting into that period now where we're really starting to get some of that higher resolution data coming in. We're going to have, much more of that to work with. We're going to be able to probably do a little better job talking about precipitation type going forward here, and anything other than snow is going to impact those precipitation accumulations quite a bit and could change the calculus for frozen bridges, things like that. So it's going to be interesting over the next few days just to see how everything plays out. But right now, with the depth of the cold air, there certainly seems like that snow is going to be the favored mode across much of the Charleston metro, maybe except for right at the coast, which is just bizarre to say. But here we go.
It reminds me, so I grew up on Long Island, and it was right on the coast, right? And you get that warm air sneaking in there. So like while further inland was always snowing, the coast always sometimes mixes it in a little bit. This is the NAM model. We have lots of different models, and we could do a whole hour on models, but we're just kind of giving you an idea, right? So you can kind of see, again, this is really close to the coast. If I go over to the GFS, it's thinking that this maybe makes it a little bit further inland. So this might actually sneak its way into portions of Columbia, maybe starting with a few flakes to the east, and then again really hammering home the point that the snow will be pretty eventful there along the coast. We're going to talk in a moment after we go through more number forecasting what those different preset types are, because that was a frequently asked question on one of our last streams. We've got the voice of Scotty Powell in Myrtle Beach. Scotty, tell us what you guys are thinking there in Myrtle. Maybe. Do we have Scotty Powell? That's okay. We have Scotty Powell's maps. So in lieu of having Scotty Powell, we do have his forecast maps that he made a little bit earlier on today that he was going to show you, and we will show them to you now. And you can kind of see he's calling for 1 to 3 inches starting in Myrtle Beach and as far inland as Florence, Dillon, and Lumberton. This is his WBTW Storm Tracker 13 map here. And then he's got a trace to 2 inches as you make your way a little bit closer to the Sandhills, Cheraw, Aberdeen in North Carolina, and then into Fayetteville. So the I-95 corridor there, I think, is going to be a big cutoff. Scotty, we'll try you one more time here on audio. You got us?
All right, I got you. Do you guys have me?
Yeah, I just tried your forecast, but why don't you correct it for me?
Yeah. Well, first of all, sorry, we're having some internet connectivity issues, so I can't pull my camera up. It's using too much bandwidth. But anyways, I was listening to a little bit of what Jared was talking about. Very unique situation. One thing that I've been noticing, and Jared, you may as well, is the European has just been so consistent with this band of snow being right along into the east of Interstate 95, where the GFS has kind of been bouncing back and forth. And now that we're starting to get into some of that high-res model solution data with the NAM and other, we have Barron here at our station, or the Graph and other stations. Some of them are bouncing back and forth, so it's really going to be track dependent. One thing I've been trying to stress over the last 2 days here on air is a switch in 50 miles, 25 miles, one way or the other of that low pressure is going to bring just immense chaos with who gets snow and who doesn't. It's going to be a very sharp cutoff of locations that could really score some big numbers, and some locations that be like, what are you talking about? So we've kind of taken the middle of the road route here at WBTW, and we're trying to look at the ride the European pony per se, and kind of stay with that consistent message of about 1 to 3 inches possible across our viewing area. Once you get east of Interstate 95, you could get up to a coating or maybe an inch of snow, but the European's just been so consistent that it's hard to ignore that when all the other models have just been back and forth. So that's what we're looking at right now. But like I said, and Jared alluded to a little bit earlier, it really depends on that track of the low pressure. The further out to sea it suppresses. It's more of a coastal event. But if that low pressure was to track 25, 50 miles closer to the coast, you're bringing more folks in for the element of seeing some snowfall, and even bringing in the fact that if it does track closer to the coast, you could eventually pull in some warmer air aloft and maybe change over to sleet for a time or two along the immediate coastline. So it's still kind of a tricky forecast. But what I've also been saying is the cold air is here and it's not going anywhere. So whatever does fall, if it's 1 inch of snow, 2 inches of snow, 3 inches of snow, whatever, the impacts are going to be the same. It's not going anywhere anytime soon. We're going to see this snow really just, if you think back to previous years of Raleigh and Birmingham and Atlanta, where they just had an inch of snow, but it caused total chaos because it automatically stuck on the roadways. And I have a feeling that could happen here just because of the cold air, and we could see that treacherous travel. So no matter what falls from the sky, if it's an inch or more, it's going to cause some major impacts. And Jared, you know, as long as I do here at the coast, we don't have those supplies that they do up in the mountains where you can continuously scrape roads and salt roads. The supplies down here is a little bit more limited on the coast. So it is going to be a mess no matter how much snow or sleet we get. It's definitely going to impact people's schedules this week. And I think that's the main driver is impacts. It doesn't matter if you get an inch of snow or 2 inches, it's all the same.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one thing that could actually be helping us, that could help us here at the coast, is that it's not an all of the state event. So they very, very possibly could reposition assets closer to the coast. So we have a little bit more. In fact, I was out and about today and saw signs on some of the interstates that were saying, watch out for crews treating roads. And it looks like that has begun. So I'll be interested to see, how that keeps up and what that looks like. But yeah, it's very different. This is not something that we're used to. Again, those of you who were here in 2018, that was a pretty exceptional event. I don't think we're getting that much this time, but again, it doesn't really take much to shut things down. And so, Scotty, to your point, impacts. And, the bridge that, James has got up on the screen right now, the Ravenel Bridge, that one is notorious for a couple days after the storm. If freezing rain develops, has been known to start chucking chunks of ice onto the roadway. So that is going to be something that we're going to have to watch.
And it's such a crazy scenario where we're normally talking about all kinds of wintry precipitation, from freezing rain to sleet to snow to even rain. But this is almost a snow or no snow event. I mean, there's really no in between, unless you do get that low to track a little bit closer to the coast and you get a little bit of that warmer air aloft to move in. So it's going to be an interesting system to watch. I agree with you, Jared. I don't know if we get that 4 or 5 6-inch amount snows here unless things really get moistened up over the next day or so. But needless to say, if it's 1 inch, 2 inches, or 3 inches, the impacts are going to be the same. And the temperatures after this snowfall event, I mean, here in Myrtle Beach, we're right around freezing and just below for about 36 to 48 hours. So before you really just get to about 36, 37, which will melt some, but it's not going to really thaw us out until we get into the weekend.
Yeah, we're showing those low temperatures again on the screen right now, Scotty. And, I think we're already counting down to next weekend, because just to get warmed up, and, people need to be thinking about, as I know my family is, if we were to lose power, how are we going to keep warm? And that's one of those things that you have to kind of anticipate when you get cold weather like this. It can be really dangerous, not only to keep yourself warm, but to keep yourself warm safely when you think about using those space heaters and things. Resource wise, Sam, what type of tools and equipment have you seen in past storms out there on the Outer Banks that would make this situation more comfortable for everybody?
We've seen it already once last week or week before with that system that came through and dumped some snow just to our north. We saw the de-icing out, and really it's getting out there with the brine solution. That's what NCDOT seems to focus on with out here, is getting some brine down to at least make it easier when we get the precipitation to keep things clear. I would go back to 2018 when we had a mix event. We had snow, then we had some freezing rain on top of it, and then more snow. And, well, we actually had rain before that. Then we got the snow. Then we got some freezing rain. So all that brine solution got washed off, and the bypass, as it's known, in Nags Head and Killable Hills and Kitty Hawk, the 5-lane 150, US 158, it was nothing but it was a skating rink. I mean, I went out there and actually found a thing floating around in the radio studio and went out there and did curling. Because it was just this huge, this thick layer of slush that froze. And it was like that for 3 days. And that's not something that you can really prepare for. One thing we have out here probably is an advantage, at least on the Outer Banks in Dare County, is you've already got the plows. We always have plows because you got to move sand off the roads.
Sure.
So there's that advantage, but it's not a lot of equipment. It's not a lot of personnel either. So the prep work that's going to go on, especially tomorrow on Monday, we've got this rain that's come through over the weekend, so they really couldn't do anything over the weekend. They'll be out tomorrow once we get some sun and some wind, as we're expecting tonight, to kind of dry the roads, get some of that brine solution down, especially on the bridges. We've got these 3-mile-long bridges you got to try to keep open as well, on top of just your regular roadways and primary roads out here. So they'll have that going on. And like you said, shifting some of those assets from the west to the east, likely we're going to see that. Maybe we'll see a few more of the trucks that would normally be out on 95 and on 64 west of Rocky Mount and into the Raleigh area. Maybe they'll send a couple of them out here to at least help things out.
Yeah, we've been talking a lot during our show tonight, Sam, and this was one of our frequently asked questions during our live stream, as you mentioned, just a week or so ago, when we were actually starting to get snow in portions of the Carolinas, breaking that snow streak in so many places. But we keep saying mixing. What does that mean? So let me explain again here to folks who maybe weren't with us for our previous programs on what we mean when we say mixing. But there are different types of winter precipitation. Snow, folks. That's the one I think most of you are rooting for if you're watching this program with us here tonight. That's where we have frozen precipitation all the way down the atmosphere from at the ground at your house to where it releases out of the cloud up above your home. But if we start to get warm air, and that warm air could just barely be above 32 degrees mixing in, a little bit of that will create sleet. That's more of droplets that freeze and form ice before reaching the surface. And that's a little bit of what Jared and Sam have been talking about when you talk about getting some of that warm air or warmer air just above freezing coming in off of the ocean. That helps create sleet. Freezing rain is a rain that freezes on contact with the surface. And I know you guys both mentioned bridges, and I got to think a lot about freezing rain. And it's just like the trickiest one because it looks like rain, but then it hits those surfaces and freezes on contact, Jared.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sam, I'm sure you can attest to this as well. Charleston, you have to use bridges to get anywhere. That's just how this works here. And so that is something that I am, that's something certainly that we're going to need to be, very cautious of. And remember, there's signs out there that says bridge freezes before, bridges and overpasses, they ice over first. And it's like, you see them every day and you ignore them and yet 98% of the time it's fine to ignore them, but that 2% of the time is what we're dealing with here. And so again, folks, the most important thing that we can do is just make sure that, if you can make it to where you don't have to travel, that's not a bad thing. It's good to have a snow day. I think there's nothing wrong with that.
Here are the chances of seeing ice. And I'm sorry, Sam, to step on you there, but you guys could see along that South Carolina coast just a little bit of a sheeting of ice, almost like a trace amount. North Carolina, your map is at 0 right now. Go ahead, Sam.
Well, I was going to say, as we're focusing the pre and during, it's going to be the after that we're going to really have to worry about, because we're going to be in the 20s. We're going to be for an extended period, at least through the rest of the work week. So we're going to get that refreezing, even with whatever sunshine we get out of here. After this thing clears out, we're going to see that refreezing or never thawing out until late Friday, maybe Saturday, before we get back into the 40s out here. So there's that issue. This is going to be a long-term event. Yeah, like you said, 1 inch is enough to really cause havoc. Once we go up higher than that, it's going to just extend that period out where we've got frozen water, we've got ice, snow, slush, all that stuff that's freezing and refreezing or never even thawing out. That's going to present some long-term travel issues, especially on the secondary roads, because we only have so many primary routes out here in the Northeast. Those secondary roads are going to be really treacherous as you get into, the right here on the coast, and then as you even get a little bit farther inland in northeastern North Carolina and in eastern North Carolina in general.
Some of you watching live with us here tonight commenting. Mitchell on YouTube says, I finally found some ice melt at Food Lion. Of all places, all the hardware stores and Tractor Supply were sold out. And you know what? I think that's real smart, Mitchell. Sometimes you got to look in the places that don't feel like the natural fit to find some of that stuff. I know I've had similar success in the past. Jeremy, we were just talking about the freezing rain, so hopefully we gave you a good indication. I think by Thursday, we won't be looking for any fresh freezing rain. Cindy on YouTube saying, I saw snow plows and de-icer vehicles traveling. Oh, well, okay. I'm sorry. Okay.
Hold on. Thursday.
Right. Thursday. Okay. All right. Tell me about Thursday.
There's a chance.
There's a chance.
We're saying there's a chance.
Yeah.
Is this a Family Guy reference, or there's actually a chance?
No, there's actually a chance.
Okay. Please, gentlemen, correct me. Jared.
All right, I'll go. So there is a chance of freezing rain on Thursday. There's a potential for a second shortwave to dig in and aloft. And what that's going to do is, what that could potentially do is spin up some additional precipitation. Now it would be freezing rain, particularly in the morning, and it's expected that it would warm up in the afternoon. But again, to Sam's point, that's just all refreezing the night that night. Mm-hmm. So we may not be done. That's just kind of a lower probability event right now. Obviously, the main thing that we're worried about is what's going to happen now, because what's going to happen in the next couple of days is probably going to influence what happens, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday down the road. As far as impacts go, but there is a chance there is a chance Thursday, maybe Friday. Some spots or it may just repeat on us here. So we're watching it. We're watching it closely. We'll see what happens here.
I'm not embarrassed to say that this is why we have people from all across the Carolinas, because the guy in Charlotte's like, Thursday will be fine. And all of you guys closer to the coast were like, whoa, flag on the play.
Yeah, probably will be fine in Charlotte on Thursday.
Probably
it's
will
along
be.
the coast where we run into problems.
Yes. So we'll say hello to Frank, watching things from Columbia, South Carolina. Frank, you guys are kind of right on the edge of this. Like me, earlier in the week, we thought, maybe we'll get a little something in Columbia, a little something in Charlotte. But I mean, what are your thoughts now? I think Charlotte is almost out of this.
Yeah, I'm pulling my hair out down here trying to figure the storm out. Let me show you a couple maps here that the Weather Service has out. Okay, so this is their official snowfall map, and they just updated it. Notice the timestamp is 9:16 p.m. So
live and fresh.
Live and fresh here from the National Weather Service. You'll notice, if you saw an earlier version of this map, you'll notice they've beefed things up a little bit along the coastal Lowcountry, where they didn't really have that darker blue 2-inch area in many places, but they do now. The lighter blue area that indicates about an inch to 2 inches, I guess, covers just about all of South Carolina's coastal plain there. And then once you get up to Columbia, maybe an inch, but probably not quite. And then further northwest. Now, that is assuming that things go the way we expect they will over the next 48 hours. How often does that actually happen with winter storms? Lately, not very often, especially. I remember what happened with the last storm 48 hours out. So the National Weather Service wisely has this map here, which they call the high end amount. 10% chance of this happening. So
that's what I'm hoping for.
You see a map that's calling for 8 inches of snow in Florence doesn't mean it's going to happen. As a matter of fact, it probably won't. There's only turn this around. There's a 10% chance of this happening.
Yeah.
So which means a 90% chance that it won't happen. But should the storm be a little bit stronger than expected and track a little further north than expected, maybe have a little bit more moisture involved than currently expected, then these heavier snow totals might come to pass, or something up to this much could come to pass. So the important thing is let's not just write the storm off just yet.
Sure.
Because the trend has been farther south, a little weaker, a little less moisture. And that's been the case for model run after model run. And it's typical for the models to do that. But then as we start to get closer to the event, they're like, oh, no, we went too far. And they start retreating back to an earlier forecast idea and flip-flopping. And there is a risk for that here. As a matter of fact, if you were to dig into the ensemble forecast and look at each individual ensemble member from the Euro and the Canadian and the GFS ensembles that INSET puts out, you'll find that there are still several individual ensemble members that shows something a little bit more serious, like this higher end amount happening. So this is what we're going to have to guard against. And again, this is not the actual forecast. There's only a 10% chance of this happening, which means there's a 90% chance that it won't happen. But nonetheless, there is a chance that there's more snow than expected. And it's something to keep in mind at this point, that if you've been watching the trends here and you're starting to cry because you wanted snow and you're probably not going to get it, or not very much of it, don't give up just yet. A day from now, we might have to give up. But right now, let's not totally give up just yet.
Well, and I don't say this as a shameless promotion, but had we done this special episode last night, we would have had one set of snow trends. And if we were to do this episode again tomorrow night, we might have a different snow trends. So that is to say, stay tuned for updates, but also just to put an exclamation point on what Frank's saying is that we're still 2 or 3 days out here. Go ahead, Frank.
And if we had done this 2 nights ago, back on Friday night, we'd be saying, should we show the Canadian model? Should we show that, or should we not show that?
Yeah.
Or Thursday night when it was going completely bonkers.
Right. Completely bonkers. Jared, there was a question.
And until yesterday, it was the most consistent model we had. And then it suddenly decided to give up on the storm.
And there's still time, like you said, for all of it to change. Jared, this
Right.
question came in. What is the earliest time for any precipitation on Tuesday?
Yeah, so this came in on the Charleston weather page, and so I'm going to presume that it's about Charleston. So we're going to start there. It may be mid-afternoon or even after sunset before we start seeing any wintry precipitation really begin to take hold. The winter storm watch is timed between 5 p.m. Tuesday through noon on Wednesday. So generally what that means is that is the window of time in which we expect, or the Weather Service for that matter, expects the highest risk for winter weather. So we may get a good bit of Tuesday in okay. There's a decent chance that we could be okay for a fair bit of Tuesday. We'll see. Again, timing on this stuff, still we're still far out enough to where those things, there's still room for movement.
Here's
So,
8 o'clock
yeah.
on Tuesday. And of course, this is just one model's take. Let me get the question out of the way so you can see it a little bit better. This is which model do I have pulled up? This is
AM or
GFS.
PM?
This is 8 p.m. Tuesday night.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm not trying to contradict you. I'm just trying to show
Yeah,
people a visual.
Yeah. No. I want to make
Because
sure
most
that
of Tuesday,
it's 8
you're right.
PM,
Most of
because if
Tuesday,
it's 8
most of
a.m.,
Tuesday.
oh my God, I'm wrong.
No. You're right. Most of Tuesday is quiet. It's a Tuesday evening event.
Yeah.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
This is another thing we'll have to keep in mind, though. Remember what happened with the last storm? We thought, okay, it's going to come in
Right.
midday, maybe a little before midday.
Yeah.
But these warm front type situations, I don't think that's going to be the case this time. But sometimes when you have this warm advection coming in, sometimes you get the precipitation to break out a few hours, 4 or 5 hours, maybe even sooner than forecast. That's what happened back with this last storm a week ago Friday.
Yeah, came in early.
And there's some risk for that here. Now, again, it looks like the way we currently expect things to happen is that stuff to start spreading over South Carolina toward nightfall on Tuesday, and may hold off to the evening, but probably right about the time it's getting dark is when it should start. But as we often say in the weather business, warm advection waits for nobody. And it could start a little earlier than expected. So if you have to be out on Tuesday, but you're thinking, oh, I want to get home as soon as it starts snowing, well, you better be watching the radar.
Yeah. I was also thinking of Brad Panovich's forecasting rules, which is that in the Carolinas, the cold air needs to come and then the moisture, and boy, is the cold air coming. It's really coming. Sam, I've got sea surface temperatures pulled up here. What are you watching?
Well, looking at that and then looking at what the wind forecast is for us up here in the Northeast, but really across eastern North Carolina, you're looking at a north wind, but look at the temperatures, not so much on the ocean side, the sound side and up into the Chesapeake Bay. You don't have a warm little eddy up there right now. I mean, it's close in the 40s, probably in the upper 30s in some spots. That's going to keep us possibly from getting that warm nose from developing, but definitely whatever starts, it's going to be with that wind. We're the predominant wind being out of the north with this thing for us. That plays well for like those high probability, like that probability map with the 10% probabilities there of, the storm overperforming, especially in the inland areas of eastern North Carolina, and even as you get into the north end of the coast. And I'm talking about Corolla and Corova and then down into Nags Head, those areas, maybe Hatteras and Ocracoke. That was one thing that was funny was when this thing all started up, we're thinking, this is the big one for Hatteras and Ocracoke. If you remember back how things were looking initially, now it looks like that's less a chance. And you can see where that warm water, it's relatively warm right around the islands. But that north wind and the sounds can really play a key factor into what happens for us and right into those inland counties in the east.
Yeah, there's a little bit zoomed in of a view there. It's amazing how many different things are at play here. And when Sam talks about The warm nose, that goes back to what we were talking about a few minutes ago when we were talking about the precipitation type. So warm nose would be some of the warm air that would be in there that would give us maybe more sleet or freezing rain than just say rain or snow. So many questions coming in. Go ahead, Frank.
One other thing to keep in mind with this, I don't know if you had the sea surface temperature anomalies handy there, but even though the waters over the Gulf Stream are warm right now, for the most part, the waters over the southwest and western Atlantic are colder than average, and actually way colder than average right near the coast right now. So, and that's probably one of the reasons why we have an opportunity for a winter storm here, because in recent years, the waters have been way warmer than average in all over this area, like they have been over the rest of the Atlantic. So that's kind of had a tendency to deflect storms off to the north, having all that warm water in place. But because the waters in this case this year are cooler than average, mostly except over the Gulf Stream, we're getting a better chance for a winter storm here.
And there's another thing to play that's not going to be at play with this storm is we're not worried about coastal impacts. We haven't had as bad a nor'easter season this year as we've had the last 2 winters, where we've had those back-to-back nor'easters. And whenever you hear the words coastal storm, for us, you start thinking, all right, well, are we looking at overwash situations? Are we looking at the beach erosion, things like that? Thankfully, this system, all these systems that we've gotten so far have been fast moving. So we haven't had that setup of that long period swell or, that onshore blow that causes issues there. That's one positive that's come out of this. We're going to get snow, but at least we're probably not going to get, the problems along the beaches.
I love all of the comments that are coming in right now, and I'm trying to keep up with so many of them. And even some discussion on like we were talking about whether or not the models have it right or whether or not it's going to be a little bit faster. Bill Jr., the YouTube super chat, $5 here. Thanks so much for the support of the Carolina Weather Group. Are we in the -% chance of getting snow in the upstate? You're in the very unlikely chance of probably getting snow in the upstate, unless this thing, like Frank was showing, overperforms with that 1 in 10 chance, which I got to tell you, the little child in me is really hoping for that. Hoping for that 1 in 10 chance, Frank.
Well, we have more breaking news here on Carolina.
Okay.
Zero Z NAM's in.
Would you like to take us there?
You don't want to know. If you're a snow lover, you don't want to look at it, but show it, James.
Boy.
So I think to contextualize it, the trend is Sunday's trend of less snow is continuing with this particular output.
Yeah, it looks that way. Let's see here. Let me get
the screen share.
12.
I do have the Frank screen share.
And that is total precipitation through Wednesday afternoon. And that's not snow or it's total QPF.
Okay, I'm going to ask the honest question. What's the chances of this thing just busts? And people come Tuesday or Wednesday are like, where's the precip?
Pitchforks.
I'm glad you asked, because that gives me the opportunity to go back to the National Weather Service and show you the low end forecast that they have.
A 90% chance?
Yeah, that you have a 10% chance of only seeing this much. And they ain't nothing on this map. Because maybe the trend continues and the storm ends up just going out to sea, and which would be the most disappointing, heartbreaking thing ever, wouldn't it?
I mean, we've already busted the snow drought, but like we still want more of it. I think so many of us who are watching this show are craving like January 2022 all over again, with like 3 weekends in a row you could go out and play in the snow, and I just don't know if that's going to happen. But again, if you're just joining us, since we have been going now for about 40 minutes, this question from Mitchell really drives home the point that we started with. Precip or no precip? What is the lowest minimum temperature over the next few days that we are looking at? Mitchell asking about northern Mecklenburg County, southern Iredell County here in North Carolina near Charlotte. And I mean, Mitchell, just to show you and then again convey to everyone else that we could try to forecast this snow down to every single grain. What we are definitely going to get in terms of impacts is cold temperatures. So Mitchell for Charlotte, let's see, 23, 17, 17, 17. Looks like 17 is what the Weather Service is calling for. But you can see, again, if you're just joining us from elsewhere across the Carolinas, we are going to be at or below freezing in North Carolina for the next couple of days. These are the overnight low temperatures, early morning temperatures. So depending on what the schools decide to do, guys, aside from Monday's holiday, these are bone-chilling school bus forecast numbers in North Carolina. And in South Carolina, it's not really looking much better. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw some delays. Jared's got his finger in the air.
And those are air temperatures. Those are
So
not
true.
wind.
Yeah, right.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be
Wind
even
chills
colder
could
when you
get
factor in the wind.
into extreme cold territory,
Yeah.
which
Yes.
again in the Charleston County warning area where I live, that's 10 degrees or lower.
Yeah.
That is
Dress
very
in
possible.
layers,
Wednesday.
y'all, and wrap your pipes.
Yep.
If you haven't done it already.
We can't tell you whether or not schools are going to make any changes because we forecast weather and not people. But the scenario presents itself to where we have seen in the past scenarios like this where they've delayed. So we'll find out. But we have the holiday tomorrow, so that buys them some more time. I will just say, if you are watching from Mecklenburg County and your kids go to public school, they also have a teacher work day on Friday. So if I was a kid and I had no school on Monday, no school on Friday, and then got a snow or freezing temperature blip in the middle of the week, what fun that sounds like. Let me see if we have any other questions or comments coming in. You guys have any other thoughts that we haven't hit on yet that we want to make sure we get in on this special edition of the Carolina Weather Group Pod?
Well, we do have a super chat to get to.
We have a new super chat? Oh, we do.
From Luke. Yep.
Luke Jones, $4.99. Thank you, Luke, for the support. How much snow is Raleigh supposed to get? So I can go over to the Raleigh map, and that is actually a fabulous transition because we've zoomed in a bit on the coast, but I don't think we've zoomed in elsewhere around the regions, and we can do that for Luke and everyone else here. So if you're in chat, thank Luke for prompting this, and we appreciate that support of us here on YouTube. So Raleigh, as of right now, Luke, is on the kind of right at the tail end. It's probably somewhere between a trace and an inch, but no more than an inch given the mean forecast. As Frank's been talking about, there are outlier forecasts as the 1 in 10 of it overperforming or underperforming. But if we kind of just give you the average right now, what the human beings at your local weather service officer are putting together, it's no more than an inch. And that's kind of the same line there if you are north of Interstate 95. But we can zoom this in a little bit and see exactly how things break out around the Raleigh area. You can see them here. We zoomed in a little bit, and you can see that line really drops off by the time you get to Durham. So like Asheboro and Greensboro, tonight's forecast, you don't have any snow. Could you see a couple flurries? Could this change? Certainly could be the case. We know we also had a comment from somebody watching in Virginia. Randall, if you're still with us, I know you guys are North Carolina and South Carolina, but what are your thoughts on Virginia? These two maps actually happen to overlay with Virginia because of the way the Weather Service jurisdictions work out. So we'll actually start here in Southwest Virginia. This is Blacksburg, Roanoke, which includes our Boone area, Avery, Watauga County, and some other counties there along the North Carolina line. Again, not really an event much for you guys. If we go to Southeast Virginia, this would include Elizabeth City and such in North Carolina, but also there in Richmond and Petersburg area of Southeast Virginia. You can see not a lot of snow in that forecast as of right now. Let's quickly take you to some of the other maps. Closer to where Sam is, you can see you guys might get an inch of snow, as we've been talking about. There's certainly some variance there, but that's what the Weather Service is calling for right now. I'll take you down to Wilmington. You can see similar amounts there along the coast. I'm going to just keep going, and then the guys can weigh in on what they think may or may not actually pan out. Here's the Charleston map again. It's so interesting to me. These both say 9:16 p.m. Eastern time, as Frank has pointed out, updated during our show here tonight. But the wider view still has Monk's Corner at 4 inches. So I don't fully understand that.
Yeah.
Here's Columbia. Hang on. We'll get back to you probably in a second there. I presume that was Jared. And the zoomed in map here, 9:16 out of the Columbia office, also has less than 4 inches, but actually uses that delineation as we get closer. So what do you guys, I'm going to stop right there, because what do you think the differences are with some of these forecasts, say an inch, some of these forecasts say 2, 3, or pushing 4 inches?
I think they're doing probabilities here. I think this is I think
Yeah.
Columbia is doing like probabilities there. Like the Charleston map is showing you kind of it's kind of the forecast, right? And it's like, this is what we think is going to happen. Columbia is saying, they're playing the probabilities a little bit more, and that's fine. That's good. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I think, I think 2 is a good midpoint. Looking at some of the briefing, materials, out of the Charleston office, there, 2, 3 is kind of the high end there. As we saw on the 5 to 10%, the 10% exceedance, you get up to 6 in Monk's Corner. I personally don't want to see the 1 in 10 chance verify, by the way, because it's only 3 inches in Charleston, and that is going to be modulated by ice. And I do not want ice. Nobody wants ice. So yeah, I mean, we see that, we'll see it played a little bit differently here. They produce so many different products. So I wouldn't read too much into the 4 inches in Monk's Corner, as you got to remember the less than sign there.
Yeah.
The Weather Service in Charleston, they're thinking, 1 to 2 inches, maybe upwards of 3 in some spots. And again, it just depends on, local bands maybe setting up, again, if there's an earlier onset to precipitation, it could be something to that. So regardless, I think other thing that I want to, circle back to here a little bit is, we want to drive home impacts above all else. You only need an inch of snow or less to shut things down along the coast. That's just how it is. You get any sort of winter weather along the coast, you're going to have problems on bridges. You're going to have problems on overpasses. And in Charleston, we live or die on bridges and overpasses. So that's just, again, we want folks to be very cautious about that. We want you to, to understand the potential there for some problems and to, prepare accordingly. And for everybody, it's going to be cold. It is going to be very, very, very cold. And so again, precipitation or not, we all have something to be preparing for here. As far as, whether you're getting snow or whether you're just getting bitter cold. And if you don't get snow, if you're right on that boundary, because this is a very strong high pressure. The thing that we also haven't talked about is that this is an extraordinarily strong high pressure system, probably like 1038 millibar, something like that. And a lot of dry air coming in with that too. So that cutoff is going to be really sharp. So there's going to be folks who are on the line there who, might be covered by a snow forecast tonight that might end up very disappointed, or they might up getting a bonanza. We really don't know. It depends on a lot of other factors.
Speaking of the coast, Sam pointed out, and I'm so glad Sam Walker has joined our Carolina Weather Group panel to tell me that, to hold me accountable here when I miss things at the coast, because I had the wrong map queued up for Wakefield. So Mitchell, if you're watching with us on YouTube, this map probably makes a little bit more sense. So this is probably the trace to the 1 inch, Sam, that we should have been showing for the next 72 hours.
Yeah. The one earlier was what's going on right now, because there was some snow up towards as you headed towards DC and Nova this afternoon and evening, and maybe even see a flake or two as this front, the last little bit, comes through tonight. But yeah, if you see right there that delineation, that is not normal. That is so abnormal to see Kitty Hawk in the 1. And you see Virginia Beach in the trace, or Norfolk and Suffolk and those areas, or Gates County right there on the border in North Carolina. Those areas are usually where the snow falls, and then there's nothing on the beach. So that's what's so different about this one. We're not looking at a Christmas 1989 scenario. Like I said before, we had our second highest ever snowfall for one day, which was almost 13 inches at Billy Mitchell Field in Frisco. But hey, we're going to see a little bit more the farther south you go. This is going to be that abnormality that with this system that we don't normally see.
I know I'm showing some really dark cameras on this Sunday night where you can't see a whole lot, but I want to let folks know that when you're streaming with us on YouTube later on in the week, these are the multitude of cameras from our friends at WeatherStem and beyond that you'll be able to track the snow live on our Carolina Weather Group YouTube channel. So I do want you to know some of the camera angles that we have available. This is just a small collection of them tonight, so that when you're with us later on in the week, you can kind of get an idea of what to expect. Jared, Jared, let me ask you as we wrap up this special Sunday night edition of the Carolina Weather Group. I know you're in chat. Is there anything else that the commenters with us live on YouTube and Facebook are kind of pressing on that we should touch on?
I know we've had some questions about, we've had some questions about Anderson, South Carolina, Lexington, those areas. And again, that's kind of on the boomer bust side, right? Not expecting much in those areas, but again, a little wiggle in the storm track back to the west, and that could be all the difference in the world for you. So generally expecting a dusting to maybe 1 inch. But we'll see. Again, this is going to be, keep an eye on it. Don't be surprised if you don't see anything. And if you do see things, that would be good too. But just be ready for the potential for impacts on travel, I think is the most important message really across, across the area. And then we do have questions, we've had some questions come in, folks kind of joining us late, talking about, could we get more than predicted? And, as we showed earlier, and I don't know if we can get that back, the high end, chance. And this is the 10% chance on the high end. You don't want to see the 10% chance on the low end because that's just a blank map. Right. That's a blank map.
You got it, Frank.
Spoiler alert. It's not fun. But if we look at the, we've got it right here. If we look at the high end, that is the high end. That's kind of like the boom side. Capital Weather Gang on Washington Post always does a boom or bust forecast. And so this is kind of the boom here. So if you get the boom, Lexington County, South Carolina, good luck. 6 inches of snow, possibly. 8 inches.
90% chance that won't happen.
90% chance that will not happen. But if you get lucky, that could. Insert the Dumb and Dumber meme. So you're saying there's a chance, and. And so again, it's very unlikely that we're going to see this, and the trends and the modeling and everything like that continue to point to a suppressed storm, continue to point to a storm that is going to be mostly a coastal event. Very strange to talk about in those terms, but it's not unusual. Just like loving anyone or being loved by anyone, according to Tom Jones, it's not unusual when we have these coastal storms that oftentimes it can.
Wondering where you're going with that.
Yeah, it can take it's not unusual to be loved by anyone, and it's not unusual for coastal storms to not affect inland. So that's just that's how this can go sometimes. So
when Melody,
gonna be interesting.
When Melody asked, did she miss the Blowing Rock update? The Blowing Rock update is you got some snow tonight as the front's making its way on through, and then this is, again, as Jared, they were just saying, this is such a coastal event. It's so weird that we're not talking about Blowing Rock. It's very weird.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Usually we're talking about how it's below zero and northwest flow snow and 60-mile-an-hour winds, but that's happening tonight. But that's it. You're just freezing your tail off and dry for a while after that.
Yeah. It's also so funny to me, the probability of weather and the impacts that it brings, right? Because we're talking about there's a 90% chance this won't happen. So there's a 10% chance that it overperforms. Well, when we get to severe weather season, we're oftentimes here in the Carolinas talking about a 2, 3, 4, 5% chance of a tornado, right? And that throws us right into forecast severe weather mode because of the level of impacts that a tornado could bring. So even a 10% chance of overachieving snow does put our antennas up. But also, as these guys have been talking to you tonight about, it's just the impacts that this really frigid air is going to bring to the Carolinas. And that's where you're going to see impacts on the roads, on the bridges, in everyday life with work and school.
Right. And that'll be an issue to think about, because this along the coast, because it's cold, this isn't going to be, assuming we actually get the snow that we're calling for and ice that we're calling for. This is not just going to be a Tuesday night, Wednesday thing. The roads are going to stay slippery much of Wednesday, melts a little bit, but then it freezes up again Wednesday night. It falls below freezing, stuff slick again Thursday morning. If we get more snow than what's expected, again, 10% chance. 90% chance it won't happen. But if we get more snow than we expect, then we're calling for, then you end up with that over a larger area, and maybe you melt a little Thursday, and then it freezes up Thursday night and Friday. The roads are slick again.
Yep.
So
And there's
on
still
Friday morning.
indications on the models that there is a small chance that some spots could see some freezing rain in the morning on Thursday and potentially even again on Friday.
I've actually got a
So-
map for that from Columbia.
Okay,
Yeah,
we're going to end
there's a
on
map
that.
for
There it is,
that.
Jared.
Yeah.
James, there it is. Not a lot of freezing rain, not a lot of ice buildup, but a touch of it, especially in the low country, especially down in Beaufort and Jasper County, along the coast there. Most cases under 1/10 of an inch, so this doesn't look like it's going to be a tree and power line damage situation. There just won't be enough ice buildup for that. Sleet and snow bail you out this time. But however, it does not take much freezing rain to make things really, really slippery, especially when you've already got some sleet and snow on the ground. So when there's freezing rain falling, it's likely that the roads are going to be really, really greasy and you won't want to drive on them.
And honestly, not just the roads, your front step,
Yep.
your driveway,
The driveway, sidewalks, etc.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. So
Not fun for driving, not fun for walking either. Sledding, on the other hand,
That would be great.
sledding when you have
Prime now.
freezing rain on top of sleet and snow, that's a lot of fun.
mhm.
Goes extra fast.
Yes.
We're back every Wednesday night here on YouTube and wherever you get audio podcasts, discussing weather science and technology and more from the Carolinas and beyond. I think we've got a plane landing right now in Myrtle, guys. I think that's what those lights are out there on the runway. Take a look at that.
Nope.
There you go. Things that happen
Nice
live.
timing.
Yeah. Perfect. And
Breaking news, plane lands in Myrtle Beach.
That's good. And let's hope it stays that way.
Hey, James, one thing we haven't mentioned.
Okay.
If you go back and look at the discussion from Newport over the weekend,
Yeah.
the B word is in there for us on the Outer Banks. And I just looked at the zone forecast for Buxton Tuesday night. North winds 13 to 17 with gusts to 22. Or Tuesday night, 17 to 26 with a highest gust of 33. So instead of the blowing sand, which we deal with on the roads, and we do have that tan out conditions, we might see some whiteout conditions out here at the peak on Tuesday night. Now, it's not like we've got hundreds of people, hundreds of vehicles out on Highway 12 in the middle of the night. We may have a dozen or 2 dozen, even in the middle of winter. But yeah, we are actually the blizzard showing up in the discussion from MHX over the weekend. It's still there. And even though it's a less than 20% with the winds that we're looking at out of the north, we could see a little bit of a whiteout situation along the beaches overnight, Tuesday night, maybe even an early Wednesday morning.
And I feel like that's a good spot. And I want to add what the definition of blizzard is for anybody who doesn't know what it is, because I think it draws up these imagery of like feet and feet of snow. But the definition of blizzard from the National Weather Service's standard point of view, and this is what Sam was just talking about, is visibility, winds picking up that snow and throwing it and making, as Sam said, the whiteout conditions. So, you don't necessarily have to have a certain amount of accumulation. You have to have those gusty winds. So that's a really good point, Sam.
And it's setting up for dry snow, aren't we? I mean, because if we're thinking about where the temperatures are, with this interaction, where we're going to be right on the interaction line here, is that it's a dry snow, so which makes blowing snow more likely.
Yeah. Another reason to be concerned about the higher snowfall totals is that because it's a dry, powdery snow, it's colder than usual, the snow to liquid ratios are going to be higher than usual. Normally for South Carolina, for example, you're lucky if it's even 10 to 1, which is the rule of thumb. Oftentimes it's more like 7 or 8 to 1. But in this case, it could be 12 or 15 to 1 because it's colder than usual. And you may have the potential to get the more dendritic kind of snow falling, which leads to deeper snow with less liquid content.
Right.
Yeah. So again, we're watching a mostly coastal event playing out in the forecast, changing hour by hour still. We'll keep you up to date on our social. Hopefully you'll subscribe wherever it is you're watching or listening to the Carolina Weather Group tonight. Hopefully it doesn't come to this, but I always like letting new viewers know that we'll have live cameras and radar and storm reports streaming on our Carolina Weather Net. You can watch that on YouTube, wherever it is you watch YouTube, from your phone to your smart TV. And if you ever find yourself, we have lots of power outages or some sort of situation like that, we'll do do extra updates on our audio podcast feed because we know it's easier to sometimes stream audio than it is to stream video if you're low on bandwidth or power. So hopefully it doesn't come to that type of situation. But those are the type of things you can expect from us here at the Carolina Weather Group. So that's going to do it for this special Sunday night edition of our pod. We'll be back on Wednesday with our weekly show, if not even sooner, as we continue to track what could be the second widespread winter storm here as the 2025 winter draws on through January. So it's really good to see you guys. We've got Jared Smith there in Charleston, Sam Walker out in the Outer Banks, Frank Strait in Columbia, and we had the voice of Scotty Powell earlier, who's now on your local Fox station if you're watching in Myrtle. So that's where Scotty ran off. But for now, I'm James Brierton here in Charlotte. We'll talk to you again real soon. Please, please, please stay warm and check on your friends and neighbors.